great walk in the woods today, but I've come across something that I have never seen before. It's a mystery to me, and I'm hoping you can help me solve the mystery. Hey, so let me show you a couple of things that I notice about these forests right now. One of the things I'm noticing is really, really, really tall white pine trees. And one of the reasons that I know that they're white pine trees is because I'm seeing pine cones all over the ground. And we know there's lots of kinds of pine trees in Vermont, but some of you might remember that white pine needles look like this. They're long and they're slender and they come in bunches. Do you remember that? And each bunch has one. This might be hard to show you on a video. 2, 3, 4. Oh, there's one more there. 5. Can you see that? That's all in one bunch. 5 different needles, and they're all stuck together. And do you remember some of us did this together? We spelled the word white. We went W-H-I-T-E, and it had 5 letters, and the white pine needles come in bunches of 5. A great way to remember them. So anyways, along with lots of other plants and some animals that I'm hearing in this forest this morning, I'm noticing something really unusual about the white pine trees and cones especially. So take a look over here with me at what I've been observing. On the side of the trail, there are all these downed pieces of wood. It must be from a tree that fell down and got cut up. But the very interesting part, the mystery, is why are there pine cones from the white pine tree all along this? This goes really, really far. Another thing I'm noticing is at the very, very top of this big pile of downed branches and logs is the highest point. Oh my gosh, friends, all the way over here. You probably can't see it, but there's still pine cones all over the wood, all the way over here. But I'm gonna climb up on this a little bit so that you can see with me this very high top point. And what's happened here is that somebody has been using this for their snack area. Here's where the pine cones have all been taken apart. We have the center part of the cone, and then we have all the separate scales. And it was inside here that there were seeds that someone was eating. So some of those things I know about. I know that some animals find a high spot to eat. And I know that some animals like to eat the seeds from white pine cones. But I have never seen such a pile like this of pine cones above the ground. I thought that animals that like to eat this kind of food usually stored the cones underground in their burrow. So friends, when I get down close and look at even more detail beyond the pine cones and the pine needles and the scales up here, I'm noticing all of these holes. They're all over the place. They're like entrances to tunnels. There's one here, and there's another one on this side. There are 2 down low here. They're all over the place with this. And that must be another clue to help us solve this mystery. So we've got to be thinking about who would be interested in white pine cones and who likes to eat up on a high spot and leave such a pile of a mess, and who uses tunnels or burrows, and is there maybe a den or a room connected somewhere in these burrows? So let's do some exploring today about burrows and dens and which animals use each of those things and what those different things even are. and see if we can solve the mystery of who has created this amazing piece of work here on this trail in my forest.
Could any of these animals be responsible for my pine cone pile? A grasshopper? A loon? A black bear? A lion? A hummingbird? A beaver? A monarch butterfly? A chipmunk? A porcupine? A bullfrog? A red squirrel? An alligator? The first thing we have to ask ourselves is, does this animal live in Vermont? I am certain that lions and alligators do not live in Vermont. So they cannot be responsible for my pine cone pile. The second question we must ask is, even if they do live in Vermont, are they here in the winter? Loons and hummingbirds and butterflies all leave Vermont for warmer places every winter. So they can't be responsible for my pine cone pile. The final question we need to consider is, even if they do live in Vermont during the winter, could they be found in the forest? Grasshoppers live in fields and meadows. Bullfrogs live in lakes and ponds, so they can't be responsible for my pine cone pile. The black bear, the beaver, the chipmunk, the porcupine, and the red squirrel all live in Vermont, even in the winter, and they all live in the forest. Chipmunks live in a maze of underground tunnels called burrows, with lots of little rooms. One is for storing food, and there's even a room for sleeping called a den. So maybe a chipmunk made my pine cone pile. Beavers live in a den that is called a lodge. Here they stay dry and warm through the winter, even though their lodge is in a pond that's in the woods. But my pine cone pile was not near a pond, and beavers don't eat pine cones. So, a beaver did not make my pine cone pile. Black bears live in a forest that looks a lot like my forest. Like the beaver, bears do not have burrows. They only have a den. Their den might be under a tree stump or in between some rocks. Even though the entrance looks really, really tight, they squeeze in and the den below is roomy. But since bears don't have burrows, a bear didn't make my pine cone pile. Porcupines, like black bears, live in dens where there are no burrows. Even though porcupines might eat white pine needles in the winter if they're very hungry, they do not eat pine cones. So, a porcupine didn't make my pine cone pile. Red squirrels live in forests with a lot of evergreen trees. Pine and spruce seeds are a favorite food for red squirrels. They will peel off all the scales from a pine cone, right down to the stalk. During the winter, they live in burrows under old stumps and trees. They store their seeds in middens, which serve as both throwaway piles for their last meal and storage piles for a future meal. What do you think?
Hey, my friends, that was so much work. thinking about the different kinds of animals that live in Vermont and that stay active here all winter and that are in the forest. Along with that, learning about the difference between dens and burrows and how different animals use each of those, right? We learned a lot of things. A hummingbird didn't make this. They're not in the woods, they're not here in the winter, and they don't make burrows or dens. The beaver, who's active all winter, we know would need water, so it couldn't be here in the forest. The porcupine, we learned about, definitely lives in dens in the winter, but not with burrows like what we've discovered here. So I am thinking that you are right. I think that the idea that maybe the answer to our mystery is that it is our little old friend, Red, who made use of all these down logs to create burrows and safe little dens underneath all of this, and who piled up all of their favorite food, and then who made this ridiculous mess on top of the pile. We would call this a midden, this pile of center stems and scales. Yep, I think you're right. I think it was our friend Red, the red squirrel, who created this super fun mystery for us today. Thanks for helping me solve this. I'll see you later, friends. Bye.
Your challenge. Take a walk in the woods nearby wherever you are. What do you notice? Are the trees tall? Are there pine cones on the ground? Do you notice any small holes that might be the entrance to a den or to a burrow for a small, or maybe not so small, animal? Be sure to look closely. Look around stone walls and at the base of trees. Look for holes in trees. Even look under rocks and around ledge. Maybe you'll notice an acorn that an animal has nibbled on, or some other sign of animal activity. Good luck. If you have enjoyed this video, please visit our website to learn more about what we do and consider making a donation.